By the end of this video, you're going to have 3 skills. You're going to know 3 things about how to work with AI that are going to set you apart from most people that don't get much out of working with AI at all. So stick with me, let's jump right in. And just to give you a little preview, the first thing we're going to talk about is prompts. So how to give instructions to AI, or how do you ask it a question in a way that you get the best possible results from it. The second thing is there are general instructions you can give your AI so that it will, no matter what prompt you put in or what question you ask, it will always follow a sort of certain way of working with you, and you don't have to tell it every single time. So we're going to talk about that. And the third thing is that you can set up projects or workspaces in your AI that will have a certain kind of memory, and you can upload files into that, etc., and work in that space, and it'll always remember the conversations you've had, on that subject matter or around that project. So those are the 3 things that we're going to talk about in this video, and you are going to love it. Boom shakalaka. Before we carry on, my name is Greg Martin. I live and work in Ireland. I'm a medical doctor. I love teaching people about AI because if you invest in learning AI skills, you get that time back again and again and again. Okay, so stick with me. Let's do this. I was going to say boom shakalaka again. I'll say it, boom shakalaka. At the end of the video, I'm going to demonstrate some of the features that I've been talking about during the video. So I'm going to bring you here and actually point you to some of my favorite language model features. Okay, let's talk about prompts. That's the little question that you type into the little box and AI reads it and gives you some kind of answer. And for a lot of everyday stuff, if you just type in a one-line question and you're just going to get a quick answer, nothing wrong with that. But very often you're wanting to get a very specific answer, or you're wanting the AI to provide you with a kind of level of detail that isn't necessarily obvious. And we're going to jump right into a couple of tips and tricks that I can give you that'll help you get much, much, much more out of the response that you get from the AI. Okay, let's jump right into that. So the first thing is give the AI some context, right? So here's an example. If I'm wanting to write a paragraph about antimicrobial resistance, which is antibiotic resistance, I might say at the beginning of my prompt, I'm a public health doctor, and I'm wanting to write something for a general audience or for the public, so a non-technical audience, and I want it to be about antimicrobial resistance. So that's the beginning of my prompt, and I've given some context, what it is that I'm trying to do, where it is that we're going, and it really makes a difference in terms of the kind of answer you get. Next, number 2, tell the AI what good looks like, what it is that you're expecting. So you want to tell it about the length that you want written, the tone, what sort of content you're looking for. So you want to say, for example, I want this to be about 150 words, I want it to be punchy, and I don't want any technical jargon to be included. Next, you can tell it what format you want this in. You could say, look, I'm looking for a paragraph, I'm looking for a table, or I'm looking for 3 options that I can compare and choose from. Now, here's an excellent trick. You can upload or cut and paste into your prompt an example of what good looks like. So if you're wanting it to write something in a particular style, you can upload a document that is written in that style and it will emulate that. Next, you can tell the AI what role to play, and it makes a very, very big difference in terms of the kind of answer you get. So for example, I'm a medical doctor. If I ask the AI a medical question, I don't want an answer that comes back in layman's terms, which it usually would do, because it usually thinks it's giving medical information to lay people. So I say to the AI, please act in the role of, let's say, a cardiologist and provide me with information as if you were talking to another clinician. And then the level of detail that I get back is completely different. It's at a much different level, and I much prefer that. You might be an engineer or an accountant, and you actually want the AI to function at a kind of level that matches your own. If you tell it that, it will do it. If you don't, it won't. The next little trick is a great one. Sometimes you're wanting to get the AI to do something quite complicated. And it might be, and further on in your journey of learning to work with AI, there's times when you want to get the AI to do something for you, and it's not clear how it is that you should ask the AI to do that. A way to start is to ask the AI to help you draft the prompt. And that sounds a little bit weird because you're saying, like, look, you tell me how it is that I need to speak to you. It's worth doing that. A couple of reasons. Firstly, it'll draft a prompt for you, often with a lot more detail and a lot more nuance than you would have thought of. You can edit that down because you might see things there within that you actually hadn't thought of as necessary, or you don't really want. You take those out, but it'll come up with suggestions and thoughts that hadn't occurred to you, and yes, happy days, leave those in. But it'll come up usually with quite a long and detailed prompt, which will really generate a fantastic answer. The second reason why this is useful is it also helps you learn how to write a better prompt, and better prompting turns into better results every time. So it's really worth asking the AI to help you improve your prompt. I mean, it sounds weird, but it really does work. The next piece of advice is about doing things in stages and pushing back a little bit. If you want a paragraph written about antimicrobial resistance, don't expect the first draft of it to be perfect. In actual fact, what I would usually do is I would say, let's brainstorm about this first. So before we produce the actual text, I want to go back and forth with you about what's going to be there within. So in the first instance, provide me with some bullet points, and I will give you a response to that. I'll give you feedback. I'll push back and tell you which of those I like, which I don't like, which I want you to kind of expound upon, etc., etc. And so the more you go back and forth in this kind of planning and iterative stage, the better the final result's going to be. If you're writing something quite long, that's really where you want to do this. So you want to say, in the first instance, I want to brainstorm with you what the major headings of this document might be. And it gives you 5 major headings. You go back and forth and you settle on the ones that you want. Then you say, okay, let's take the first heading and let's think about what the subheadings or bullet points within that heading, what they might look like. And again, you go back and forth, you push back. It might not get everything right the first time, but before long you'll have an outline that you're really happy with. And at that point you say, now please draft the full text of this, and the result that you're going to get is going to be very close to what you want. At the end of it, you might need to do a bit of editing. That's fine. That's the best way to get at. And it also means that you're bringing something to the table. Nobody wants to read a document that was just completely churned out by an AI. But something that was churned out as a function of you working closely with the AI. It's your writing partner. And this is the example I'm using is it drafting something for you, but the same thing applies if you were building an app or if you're writing code or whatever you were doing, the same principle applies. You want to be doing it with the AI. It is your partner. And so there needs to be a lot of you bringing something to the table, you bringing your own thoughts, and you do that through this iterative building process. So do things iteratively and push back a lot. And the final advice on prompting is give the AI some boundaries. Okay, so say to it, if you're not sure, don't guess, but rather ask me, right? So this is to try and protect against hallucinations. AIs can sometimes guess at an answer and they present it to you with a lot of confidence as if it's just factual. So you want to say, don't hallucinate, don't guess. If you're not sure about something, ask me or tell me. We can work on that together. You can build that into your sort of general instructions of AI, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute, but you can also stick that directly into a prompt, and it really makes a big difference if you do that. And along those lines, you can also tell it to build in a checking stage. So once you've done this, go back and check that it's right, or here's a document that I want you to fact check what you've written against. So, you can actually get it to make sure that it's done everything correctly. Another little tip is, if you are asking the AI to extract data from a document and create a table or something like that, or anything that's working with data, or it's doing some sort of extraction process, specifically ask it to write code to do that. You don't have to specify that it's Python code, or it'll know. And if you say, do this process by writing code, it will write some Python code in the background to undertake that task, and it's much less likely to get it wrong. It's much, much more likely to get it right. It won't hallucinate. The codes don't hallucinate. Code gets it right every time. So that's a little tip and a trick, and I use that a lot, and it really, really makes a difference. So those are general ideas that you can throw into any prompt, but some of them are quite generic. In other words, some of those are ideas that you would like to be applied to every prompt, and you don't want to have to retype it every single time. And that's where this idea of general instructions comes from, and we're going to talk about that now. So most models, in fact all of them that I'm aware of, have a feature in the settings whereby you can give it general instructions that it'll apply to everything it does with you. So you could say in the general instructions, so not inside the prompt, but in the general instructions sitting in the settings, whenever you generate an answer, don't guess, don't hallucinate. If you're unsure, ask me, etc., etc. And then it will apply that to every single prompt that you type in. So here's a few things that you can stick into your general instructions. You can say who you are, so your role, your profession, anything that affects how answers should be pitched. You can say what you're working on, so what your current focus is. You can say how you want answers to come, so you could talk about the tone, the length, the format, be brief, use bullet points, no filter, etc., etc. You can give your language preference, so you can say you want British English, not American English, or the other way around. You can tell it what to avoid. You can say, I don't want padding. I don't like M dashes, because, by the way, language models are famous for sticking M dashes everywhere, which drives me mad because most people don't use them in everyday writing. As I mentioned before, you can tell it not to guess. So if you're not sure about a fact, say so. Again, you can say to use code when code is more appropriate and would be more accurate. Put that into the general instructions. And you can say that in general, if there are factual claims, you would like sources. So anytime accuracy matters, AI needs to cite where it got the claim from. And if you stick those general instructions in, you will find that all of the answers you get from the AI will adhere to those, and you'll find working with the AI much, much easier. The next thing I want to talk about are dedicated workspaces or projects. They're called different things in different models, but it's the same thing. Really, you can set up a project and come back to it again and again and again. And into that project, you can upload certain documents, which will be remembered every time you come back to that project. It'll have read all of those documents and be up to speed. It'll also have read all of the previous conversations you had in that project, and you can just build on it again and again and again over time, and it really becomes a very rich conversation over time. It's a fantastic way to work with AIs. It also means you can have multiple projects, and every time you move into one of the projects, you're having a very specific kind of conversation with an AI that is really honed in on that subject matter. It makes the conversations about that subject matter absolutely beautiful. And again, inside those projects, you can give even more generic instructions that it will apply to that project. So remember, we said for the entire AI model, you can give these general instructions that it applies to every prompt. And that's great. And then inside a project, you can be even more specific. So you can say, inside this project, here are some general instructions. I want you to act in the following way. I need you to be a copy editor, or whatever it is that project is about. And it will then very specifically, and over and above the general instructions that you've been given before, it'll very specifically act in the way that you've described for that project. So, for example, in a working situation, you may be part of multiple teams, right? You're part of a working group that's doing this, you're part of another team that's doing that. People often are spread across multiple different projects. Each of those teams and projects may have specific terms of reference. They may have meetings. Those meetings have got minutes. Those minutes have got tasks, right? So for each of these things, if you create a separate project in your AI, upload the terms of reference of that project and supporting documents. So when you're in that project, it knows and understands exactly what the project's about, firstly. Secondly, upload the minutes of the meeting. If this is stuff that is not going to be too sensitive, and we're going to talk in this series of videos on safety in AI, you don't want to be uploading anything that is sensitive or anything that you wouldn't want to be in the public domain into an AI, and there's good reasons for that, and we're going to talk about that in a separate video. But, assuming that you're comfortable sticking this into your AI, then every time you come back to that project, you have really bespoke, very specific, very focused conversations, and it knows and understands everything about that project. It knows what your role in that project is. If the minutes flag anything that has been allocated to you as a task, your AI will know it and will remind you of it. Okay, now that we've talked about the theory, I'm going to just give a very quick demonstration of the ideas that we've talked about. I'm going to show you them in Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini. Those are the three models that I use a lot, and hopefully this will give you a sense of how to get some of this done. Let's talk about prompting. I'm not going to re-go over everything that I've said in this video about prompting, but I do want to show you a little trick that you might find useful. The different models have different strengths and weaknesses, and I'm not going to get into the weeds on that now, but a good way for you to get a sense of which model really works for the kind of work you're trying to do, or that maybe you might use different models in different contexts to get a sense of where their strengths and weaknesses lie. Type a prompt and cut and paste that prompt into all the models and see what the differences look like and get a feel for which of these work for you. So if I go here and I say, what should I eat for lunch today? I'm going to paste that. So this is in Claude. I'm going to run that in Claude. I'm going to run the same prompt in ChatGPT, and I'm going to run the same prompt in Gemini. And you'll see that we get different answers. So Claude, I've given Claude instructions in the background, and we'll talk about that in just a second, where I've said to it, give me options and make it all clickable, blah, blah, blah. So it's asking me, and I'm saying make it quick and easy, and it's going to generate some sort of answer out of that. We'll see ChatGPT has got some kind of answer. I'm not going to read these answers to you. You can, you get the idea. But the point is that, Gemini's done something a little bit longer. There you go. Claude's nice and brief, and I've asked it to do that. So you can see how cutting and pasting prompts into the different models helps you get a sense of which model works best for you in different contexts. The next thing I want to show you is how to put general instructions into your model so that it will follow those instructions in every single prompt that you put in, unless you tell it otherwise, of course. So here we're in Claude. If I go into, click on my little name down there's settings, scroll down, and here you see instructions for Claude. And you can see I've got some instructions here. It says communication style, provide short answers, prefer bullet points unless longer text is needed. I'll ask for more details if I need it. Always use British, Irish, English spelling, etc., etc. So you can see how I've given instructions that I want to apply to all prompts, and it'll always do that unless I specify otherwise. And the same features exist in the other models. And the last thing I wanted just to show you is projects. So if I click on projects here, go to new project, I'm going to just give this project a name. I'm going to say testing, project testing, testing. Okay, don't worry about that. I'm going to say create project. Now, here's where things get really powerful. Okay, it's created a project. Okay, at the moment, there's no difference now. If I put in a prompt, it would behave like any other prompt that I put in. Here we've got instructions, and I can give this particular project very specific instructions. And these instructions will supersede the general instructions that we've put into Claude already. So it will include the instructions from Claude. So in Claude, general instructions, I've said to use British English. That will apply here. Although inside this project, I can overwrite that and say, for this project, use US English spelling. And it will do that for this project only. Does that make sense? So you can give very specific, or this project might be something where I'm doing, copy editing of something that I've written. So I can say, in this project, act in the role of a copy editor. And it will then, in the context of this project, every time you come back to it again and again and again, that instruction will always apply. And it'll also have a memory of all of your conversations in this particular project. So it's very, very powerful for working on things over time. And then the beauty here is you can upload files. You can upload a lot of files, documents, PDFs, Word documents, etc., etc. And every time you come to this project, it will have all of the information from those files in its context, and you'll be able to have conversations that are very, very rich. So projects are absolutely beautiful, and you've got them for Claude, you've got them for ChatGPT, you've got them for Gemini as well. So I hope that makes sense to you. I hope you found that useful. In the next video in this series, we're going to be talking about how to use AI as a writing partner, and we're really going to get into the nuances of how to work with AI to write beautiful documents. Click on the link on the screen right now, and that'll take you into the next video, and I'll see you there. Remember to subscribe to this channel if you haven't before. You can write some comments in the comment section or send me your thoughts, and I'll try and respond to those. Always remember, don't ever change, don't do drugs, always do your best. See you soon. Take care. Boom shakalaka.